So how was class today?
Class was great.
Yeah?
Um,
This is
yeah,
what? This is kind of, for this area, this is episode 2, right? So to speak?
this is session two, kind of finding your team purpose. Session one, TOMO 101, an introduction to the language of kind of what motivates us.
See, and that's really what I want to get into, right?
Yeah.
So everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Big B Mortgage Podcast. Today, I've got a very special guest sitting in the chair out in the lovely Phoenix Ops Center, Mr. Chris Allen from Movement Mortgage. How you doing, bro?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So tell everybody who doesn't know you what your title is at Movement.
Most days I'm not sure. Title right now,
Jack of all trades.
VP Training and Development.
Nice.
So the functions of training, development, and culture, or our Thrive department, are technically kind of rolled up under me.
Right. Now, I know what that is. I get the privilege of knowing what that is, but obviously most people don't. But before we jump into that part, how long have you been with Movement?
3 years.
3 years. And you came on underneath the development side as far as that goes, as far as people development? Or
So I came on as the Chief Talent Officer in May of 2015. Casey brought me in. We had about 1,600 employees, and we had known each other previously. He said, we are going through rapid expansion, and we need someone to put the structures together for our people.
Right.
And so I helped to build the recruiting structure. I helped to build the HR structure, the training and development structure, market support structure.
Good God.
And then as we put leaders in place there, moved over into probably what aligns with my passions more specifically, which is people development, the training and development specifically. And that's where I found myself now.
So inside of your background, though, I mean, did you have a background in that prior to coming to Movement? Did you do something similar to that in a past life, so to speak, or what?
Well, I guess what I would say is, if you were to pull up my LinkedIn profile, people would go, "This guy's been all over the place." but I think the point I would make is, any one of us has a unique gifting in how we've been made, wired, how God's created us, and my passions are people. And so I came out of college. I actually played soccer for 4 years.
Right.
I was in the pharmaceutical industry for 2.5 years and learned the training department in the pharmaceutical industry.
Really?
Then I helped a friend build an investment company for 5 years in Charlotte, and I helped to kind of build the culture and the people of that organization. Then I jumped from there and finally said yes after having been asked 4 times to come on staff at a large church in Charlotte called Elevation Church. Helped to build out kind of campus pastors and campuses there.
Right.
And spent almost 3 years there. And then Casey said, "Hey, I need you at Movement." And so made the jump back. I love the marketplace. I love where it really happens every day for most people.
Right.
And to be in an environment where I get to spend at least 40 hours a week with people and developing them, that's my passion.
See, that's amazing to me because honestly, like, and having been here now 2.5 years, obviously I see what it's like as far as when you're around good people. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But I've had organizations to where there was no real investment in the person. There was more of an investment in the process, maybe. The mechanics of how to be a top producer. You know, make 40 calls a day and don't take no for an answer and things like that, but never really trying to get into what motivates or what drives the passion. Here, completely different story, obviously. What about that would you say is the most, where does the passion come from to want to build people?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I mean,
yeah.
my vocabulary ain't that good,
Yeah.
right?
No, I know exactly what it is. I mean, I watched my dad, who will retire from 40 years of ministry, this weekend. We celebrate a party for him Saturday.
Okay.
Again, we're recording this in kind of mid-May. But,
Right.
On Saturday, he will retire, and they'll throw a party. I watched my dad love people well his entire career. So I watched my greatest mentor, my dad, love people well every day. And what I saw is that people in the marketplace would go to work and then come home for their passion. So they would go and they would spend 40 hours a week, at least 40 to
minimum,
maybe 80 hours a week, in an office with people, so that they could provide for their real passion. And I just always thought, like, could you not create a marketplace environment where people felt encouraged, developed, strengthened, where they would go home having been a better person, and then they would then come to work, and their greatest community, their friends, their relationships, their teammates would be able to support them, so they go home better husbands, better wives, better friends, better kids, whatever it may be. And my deep passion is to say, could we create a workplace environment that honestly leaves people better as people, so we send them back home as better contributors to society than when they actually came in the door? And that's honestly my driving passion, because people are looking for it.
They are. I think sometimes people are scared of it, though. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, because they're scared of being known.
Yeah. Sometimes the hardest mirror to look in is your mirror, right?
But yet here's where the psychology comes in. People are scared of being known, and yet want to be known. So we spend all of our time wanting to be known, wanting deep conversation. So we find places for that to happen: coffee shops, microbreweries, churches, other organizations, clubs, networking events. We try to find those places, but yet getting into deep conversations where we actually become known, like, we're all sort of resistant to it because we don't know if it's safe.
Yeah, you're vulnerable.
That's right.
I mean, and that vulnerability is scary.
But yet it's in our vulnerability where we grow the most.
Agreed, but you've got to face the fear, right? And I think, like, that's where the paralysis comes in a lot of times.
Yep.
Would you agree?
Yep. So the only people who can bring out true vulnerability are people who build incredible levels of trust, where people feel safe. And honestly, that's kind of my drive, is could we create environments, workplace environments, that are so safe that people can bring all their crap to work and leave better people.
Man, I mean, it sounds amazing. But of course, I don't want to say it sounds like a fairy tale, right? Because some of the best things sound unbelievable sometimes, right?
Yep.
But I see it, and I see it. And one of the things that I've found here, because honestly, this is the first place that I've ever been a part of, this community that I've ever been a part of, that it wasn't just about the money. To be totally honest, I didn't even join movement for the money. For me, it was what we were doing outside of the business. And I always kind of jokingly say it was a video. It was one of the videos back when King was here, and he was doing those videos, and it was called Tony's Story. And it literally, like, between that and Toys for Tots, it basically brought me to my knees, and I had to be a part of it. And being able to see that culture, right, kind of grow and continue to grow even as we continue to grow. That's the part that makes me always curious as to how we do that. People say, well, what's the secret sauce? What's the Kool-Aid like over there? And it's like, it's not really Kool-Aid. It's just life.
So if I can put it into our conversation of Movement Leadership Academy, it's the direct motives. And the direct motives.
I know this. Yeah. I know this. Play, purpose, and hold on. Play, purpose, and potential. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And so the interesting thing about what you just said, that it was the video of Tony's Story, and the Toys for Tots, is that those two videos gave you a deep sense of purpose.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't have been able to actually speak the language, but what happened internally is that those videos pointed to a deep sense of purpose that you didn't have.
Right.
Most people are driven by the indirect motives of emotional pressure,
economic pressure, and inertia. See, I've been paying attention.
That's good. and inertia defined as, why do you do what you do? I have no idea. I can't identify the motive.
Right.
And so when most people in the marketplace are driven by emotional pressure, shame, guilt, fear, anxiety, stress, all that,
Right.
or economic pressure, I just got to pay the bills and I got to avoid the penalty.
Right.
We forget in our careers that there are even the direct motives that are still out there. And so we look for play, purpose, and potential in our hobbies, in nonprofit organizations or our churches, and somewhere outside of our career.
Right.
And yet, could you actually drive direct motives in the workplace environment at a company? And what you responded to through Tony's story and Toys for Tots was a company that was trying to drive direct motives, and we didn't even really know what to call it.
Yeah. Yeah, you didn't have a title for it yet,
No,
really.
we didn't have a language.
It was just who we are.
Yeah.
Or who movement was, right?
Yeah.
And that was huge. The weird part was, and I mean, obviously, again, it's not all about the money, but what I realized was when I made that decision and I joined and I really got to peel back the onion, for lack of a better term, and really see deeper, it was like, wow, like it was just even bigger than my mind even imagined watching those videos.
Mm-hmm.
And oddly enough, the money just showed up.
Well, that's what we've been talking about in the Movement Leadership Academy, is that's honestly what drives performance.
Yeah.
And so for those of you who have no context for this, this idea of TOMO, total motivation, is from a book called Prime to Perform by Neel Doshi and his wife, Lindsay McGregor. It's become a New York Times bestseller. They speak all over, but a lot of the material that we're using is from these guys at Vega Factor. And what they are saying is that you have tactical performance, the execution of a plan,
Mm-hmm.
and any of the motives, whether direct or indirect, can motivate somebody to execute a plan.
Mm-hmm.
But adaptive behavior, which is necessary when uncertainty happens, like what we're seeing in the mortgage market right now, volatility, right, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, when that happens in an environment, we need people to be adaptive. The greatest creativity comes out in people when they are driven by the direct motives of play, purpose, potential, not the indirect motives of emotional pressure, economic pressure, or inertia. And so trying to create an environment where we're improving or increasing people's direct motives is going to ultimately give us creativity to get through the difficult times. Adaptive behavior.
Right. And then another thing that you guys talked about, well, and it's also in the book, was VUCA. Did I say it right?
Yeah, VUCA.
So tell me about, just since we're talking about this, let's talk about VUCA too.
VUCA.
Yeah.
VUCA is a term used across multiple industries, but kind of coined by the U.S. military in the 1980s. Stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And in most situations, we build tactical plans for basically environments that we assume are going to happen.
Right.
And yet the reality is nothing ever happens as planned. And so we need loan officers, processors, closers, underwriters, everyone within our company to operate in adaptive performance.
Yeah.
Because VUCA happens every day. Right. Every single application that comes in here, every file that comes in, every person that walks through the door has a level of VUCA.
Right.
We're all little VUCA time bombs.
Yeah. Dude. So let me ask you a question. Yeah. So, okay, we're in the class. We're doing this. We're talking about TOMO. Obviously, everything makes sense, right? And then later on, I want to share a story because I actually had an experience with an Uber driver today that totally made me think about the Cobra
effect.
The Cobra effect.
Yeah.
Like I was even telling one of the other market leaders, I was like, dude, that was total Cobra effect.
It's awesome.
But
he's speaking the language.
Yeah. But so let's talk about this though, and this will probably be an easy one for you to answer. But you're you're chasing your play, your purpose, and your potential, right? Obviously at varying degrees depending on the person, I would assume.
Yep.
Right? You're trying to suppress the indirect motives. But what do you do when, like, how are you supposed to re-engage that when you fall off that proverbial wagon? You know what I mean?
Like, meaning when emotional pressure, economic pressure, and inertia become, like,
start
really
to come in and kind of overpower. Like, in other words, you start off with your purpose.
Yep.
Right? But somewhere along the way, and everybody does this, right? We call it getting in a rut,
Yep.
hitting a wall,
Yep.
burning out, right? At some point, whether it's and I don't really know if it's the economic, but, well, I mean the social, but maybe the economic
Yep.
is usually the one that kind of, I think, creeps up on people.
Yep.
Right? Because when you're not living in that play, purpose, or potential, you're really not being as productive. Thus, it's going to, I don't know, further drive up the economic, right? How do you reverse it?
Yeah.
How do you go back?
Yep.
Like, how do you hit the reset button on that?
Um,
What are your thoughts?
well, so I don't know. Some things are within our control. Some things are are outside of our control.
Okay.
And sometimes market conditions, like what we're seeing right now in terms of kind of the mortgage industry
Sure.
and the housing and deal and all that, like we can't really control that. And so some of those factors are actually affecting emotional pressure, economic pressure, and inertia.
Yeah.
I think, though, as human beings, and this is where I go psychology on you,
Please.
we were made for relationships.
Okay.
And there's a term kind of defined as your social support network.
Right.
And as human beings, when we're under great levels of stress, our typical reaction as humans, and you can even see it in animals, is to kind of run and hide.
Okay.
And so you'll see somebody who's under great stress or pressure, they put their head down, they work harder, they go into a kind of a corner
A cocoon
and just
even.
and just like dig in.
Right.
And they think that that's how they're going to get their way out of it.
Right.
The reality is that all of us humans, the only way out, and this has been studied by positive psychology in the last 15 years. That's kind of the study of positive psychology. What makes people happy?
Yeah.
All of us in those times, instead of actually going into a hole, climbing in that hole, we need to go to our social support network.
Okay.
Another way of looking at it or talking about it would be your teammates or your community.
Right.
Or your best friends. And the only way out of those highly emotional pressure situations or economic pressure is to get back with people who know you, love you, respect you, who can literally speak truth to you and tell you to get your head out of your butt.
Right.
And get back to what you're passionate about. Right. Another way of looking at play is the idea of passion. You've lost your passion. How do you get back to that passion? And it's the people who know you the best who can help you get back there. Hey, the purpose. You got into this because of a great purpose. You've forgotten that purpose.
Right.
Let's go back out and serve again. You forgot about potential. Why did you get into this in the first place? You said you wanted to grow in these areas. What have you done with that? You're just kind of focused on the day-to-day.
So it's about having those brutal, honest people.
Yep.
That love you, right?
Allowing them in.
Or respect you. You know, it's funny because and again, as a market leader, I run into it. Like I experience it, right? And lucky for me, I have my wife is my rock.
Yep.
Right? So she's the one who's like, just put your head down, keep going.
Yep.
You're doing good.
Yep.
You know, but then I'm very blessed to have my business coach. You know, and my business coach has become like one of my best friends at this point. But he's still the guy who kicks me in the pants, just like you said.
Yep.
You know, but I see it though. I see it in other people. Not necessarily in my office, but like at other companies. You know, they're looking for something more. You know, the thing is that they hear all of this other great stuff about us, and it's like, yeah, smoke and mirrors. It's like, no, it's not. You know, but speaking to what you had said though about people digging in and finding a cocoon, I actually had an experience with somebody who did that. Something kind of traumatic, I guess, happened to them, and literally their response was they just kind of closed their door, isolated themselves, and dug in, and ultimately it didn't work out well.
Yeah.
It's weird though. You would think that when you try to pressure down on the productivity part, there would be some kind of relief, but no.
Mm-mm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Sorry if I'm rambling.
No, I'm in total agreement because as you're sharing these stories, you're seeing like these as real life examples played out.
Yeah.
And
of
it's
exactly what we're
studying. It's not just a philosophy. It's not just a bunch of words. It's not just a really sort of intellectual book. It's not even just the study of psychology. It's like really happening day to day.
Yeah.
So tell me about this Uber driver.
Okay. So I had like the greatest Uber driver today. Me and a candidate who was with me, and so we're driving and stuff, and he is older fella, right? Cowboy hat, Marine Corps logo on the hat. You know, cusses like a sailor. Like, I'm in love with the guy from the moment he picks us up. Long story short, he drives for Uber, but what he does apparently is he leases his Suburban from a gentleman who owns a bunch of Suburbans and leases them out to people who drive for Uber. Okay?
Wow.
So
This is
in
an interesting
essence,
business model.
whoever this person, and it's like $500 a week he pays to have this Suburban that he can drive for Uber. So he has to live in this Suburban for like 10 plus hours a day.
Yeah.
6 days a week.
To make it worth his while.
Right. But like, I'm thinking of the guy who owns all the Suburban who's leasing them out to the people who drive for Uber so that they can have a Suburban to be on the blacklist or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of what you were talking about, the Cobra effect, right? How, you know, they were trying to get rid of all the Cobras, and I'll let you tell the story, but all that ended up happening was Cobra farms. And so with Uber, it's to like not be, you know, an organized taxi service, for lack of a better term, but you got people out there buying cars and leasing them out basically as their own version of a taxi service.
That's right.
To me, that was Cobra effect.
Yeah. Yeah. So the story that Bobby's talking about is in Delhi, India, in the early 1800s, under British colonization, the Brits came over, and the largest snake that they had ever seen fit in the palm of their hand on the British Isles, and they get over to Delhi, and I can't really imagine it, but let's say you're walking down the street and all of a sudden a cobra jumps out at you, like the only snake in the world that can stand up and stare at you.
Right.
Like, you run away screaming.
And it's got wings.
It's danger. Let's just say danger. Yeah. And so the British reaction was, we got to do something about these cobras. We got to get rid of them.
Right.
So they set up a bounty whereby individuals could bring in a cobra head, chop the cobra head off, kill the cobra, bring it in, and we'll pay you for it.
Yeah.
It sounds like a legitimate structure, a strategy, a fairly good tactic to get rid of cobras. And as they were paying people for cobra heads, the cobra problem didn't seem to be decreasing in the city. And so one day, some Brit walks outside the city and stumbles upon the first of many cobra farms, realizes that as a result of the bounty, very smart entrepreneurs had figured out how to take advantage of the system. And so they were now raising cobras to kill them, turn them in, and get paid.
Yeah.
So when the Brits realized what was being done, they cut the bounty program immediately, and therefore there was actually no benefit to raising or farming cobras anymore. So all the cobra farmers said, well, there's no need for them. We can't take care of them anymore. They released them. And the city of Delhi ended up with more cobras after the program than before.
And they had paid all this money out.
And so, this idea of the cobra effect, we see it in businesses and organizations all the time.
Right.
The unintended consequences or the maladaptive behavior that occurs when you are driving behavior towards a tactic, and that's all that you can think of. People are pretty creative, and they will figure out their way around it, even if it's maladaptive behavior. We've seen it in banking. Mm-hmm. We've seen it in education. We've seen it in Uber. And so what was supposed to be this privatized, use your own car taxi service now has created other industries which apparently involve the purchasing and then releasing of Suburbans.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're talking high mileage Suburbans. And I asked him, I'm like, is this just like a one-hit wonder? And oh no, there's numerous people that do that now.
So you've got to think he's
probably
picking them up.
Cobra effect.
He's probably picking up
auctions,
high mileage Suburbans, probably from the limo services, who drive them for a few years, put the miles on them, and then sell them to this guy.
Yep.
That's amazing.
I know, right? It actually sounds like pretty lucrative.
All of these cobra effects are incredible entrepreneurial ideas.
Right.
In my studies, and I don't know if I told you this, but in Hanoi, Vietnam. It was under French colonization, and they had a rat problem. They did the same thing. They paid for rats. Bring in a dead rat, we'll pay you for it. They had rats crawling through the sewage system and up inside people's toilets. And so they paid people to get rid of rats, and they found the same thing, rat farms on the outside of the city. Bogota, Colombia had a pollution problem and a traffic problem.
Yeah.
So they implemented a structure where, based upon the last 3 digits of your license plate, certain people could drive Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Other people could drive Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. But people had to get to work. And so in order to get to work, you bought a second vehicle with a different 3 digits on your license plate, which allowed you to then drive every day. The problem is, in order to afford that second car, you got a beater.
Right.
With worse pollution problems than the first car. So now you've increased traffic and pollution when you were trying to decrease it. It happens all the time.
I mean, yeah, and that's the part that blows my head. Like that's the part that just leaves me speechless a little bit. Like, wow. But again, it's a testament to people thinking outside the box, I guess. I mean, if we're gonna look for a silver,
spirit.
Yeah, at its core, you know. So what's on the horizon, man? I mean, I know we're doing these classes. I know, obviously it's the first one was awesome. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. Yeah. We've got this going on for how long now?
We'll do this 13 months, but Movement Leadership Academy, the reason branded that way is that this thing will continue into the future.
Right.
The sessions with our partner Vega Factor out of New York City will be 13 months. But there will be a new iteration to what Movement Leadership Academy looks like every month going forward.
Really?
And I am so passionate about the development of our people.
So this isn't just a one and done thing.
No. And it may look a little different.
Sure.
But we are going to continually develop our people with whatever we believe is best and whatever's next. And so it might look, we have a really cool online learning management system that we can utilize for all of our people in 48 states. I mean, obviously, I love doing more instructor-led stuff, but we will find ways of continuing to develop our people into the future.
Well, see, and the other thing I love about it is we're not just limited to sales managers or market leaders or regional directors. Like, you're doing this for our operations staff too, right?
This is the entire vertical. So this isn't a hierarchical class on management training.
Right.
We have now, and you may not even know this, but initially we had space constraints, and after kind of getting this thing rolling, I realized that every single person needed the opportunity to be a part of this, and so it is an optional thing. But we now have enrolled 1,700 people that are going through these sessions, 17 different sessions a month.
Wow.
Across our organization. So the only people in our organization that aren't participating on a monthly basis right now are loan officers who are spread all across the country.
Right.
And yet we are recording sessions, and they will have the opportunity to engage in the material going forward.
That's awesome. That's
every
awesome.
person in the company.
So, TOMO score of 46. Is that low?
So, TOMO score is on a scale of like negative 100 to positive 100.
Right.
And TOMO score can change from team to team.
Right.
Can change from individual to individual and from day to day.
Yeah.
And so when you look across industries, if you took TOMO scores of other competing mortgage companies, my gut tells me that that'd be pretty good.
Right.
Because there's probably a range of TOMO scores. But there's no way of knowing. We kind of haven't researched outside of it. I'm assuming you've taken that from
I absolutely
your online
did,
platform.
sir. Yes, 46.
That's good.
Yes, at least I wasn't negative.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, dude, I know this was a quickie, but man, I just want to thank you for taking time to sit in the chair today.
You bet.
You got any nuggets you want to let go of before we conclude?
I got one last nugget for you.
Bring it.
Always about people.
Okay.
It's always about people.
Agreed.
Done.
Boom.
Drop the mic.
Drop it. Don't drop it, dude. That might break. All right.
Paid big money for this.
There you go. Yeah, the best Amazon has to offer, baby. I wouldn't want to disappoint my 7 listeners, all right?
Come on,
Let's
come
take
on.
it easy, baby. Hey, so if people want to find you, and a lot of people try to give out cell numbers, don't do that. But if people wanted to look you up and reach out to you, what would be the best way to do it?
I think probably on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Chris Allen. You can find me on LinkedIn. There's probably a lot of Chris Allens, but Chris Allen Movement, you'll find me. I'd love to connect with you that way. You can email me too.
Yeah.
chris.allen@movement.com. That's fine. But I love helping companies think about people. So if there's any way that I can help any of your listeners, I'm happy to.
Awesome, man. I appreciate your time today, brother.
Yeah. Thanks, Bobby.
Hey, guys, I hope you have enjoyed this episode of the Big B Mortgage Podcast. If you did, give us a like, give us a share. But whatever you do, for God's sake, stay social, everybody. Later.